Some performers inhabit a space completely separate from conventional Hollywood systems. Benicio del Toro brings an elliptical quality to his work, vibrating on an entirely different wavelength from those sharing the screen with him. Tilda Swinton carries an alien intensity, as though she materialized from another realm altogether. And then there's James Spader, someone who's constructed an entire career portraying precisely the kinds of individuals your mental health professional cautioned you against. Where his peers chased protagonist roles and romantic lead opportunities, Spader pursued the ethically ambiguous, the mentally intricate, and the profoundly disturbing. We're diving into the professional journey of James Spader today, examining how he constructed his legacy by refusing conventional casting, why he's perpetually existed on the margins, what attracts him to figures dwelling in ethical twilight zones, and where this mysterious performer finds himself currently. Time to roll credits. Born in Boston during 1960 to educator parents, James Todd Spader emerged from circumstances worth noting because they point toward a certain scholarly grounding, an environment where intellectual exchange held value and thoughtful discourse mattered deeply. His education took him to Phillips Academy located in Andover, Massachusetts, among the nation's elite preparatory institutions. This represents exactly the sort of place that typically channels young people straight toward Ivy League universities and subsequently into influential leadership positions. At 17, Spader abandoned that path entirely to chase acting dreams in New York. This represents his initial defining decision, deliberately stepping away from the establishment trajectory that stood readily available to him. Rather than pursuing higher education, he cobbled together various jobs. Teaching yoga classes, operating delivery trucks, mucking stables. These weren't the typical glamorous gigs actors take while waiting for their break. They were hands-on positions that would have seemed unimaginable for most graduates from his educational background. Once the early 80s arrived, Spader began securing film opportunities. He possessed the appearance for traditional leading man casting. That penetrating stare, the privileged background that translates beautifully on camera. The Brat Pack phenomenon was crystallizing, and Spader had the appropriate age, appearance, and social proximity. Yet he never truly joined their ranks. Playing Richards in Mannequin during '87, he embodied the sleazy corporate vice president, nearly a parody of privileged business antagonists. Tough Turf cast him as the affluent adversary. Pretty in Pink featured him as Steph, the moneyed prep school student who casually demolishes others for entertainment. These performances hadn't yet developed real depth. They were archetypes, though they created a recognizable pattern. Spader as the figure audiences delighted in despising. Oliver Stone's Wall Street showcased a distinctively Spader characteristic. His character's thoughts remained perpetually ambiguous. The genuine pivot arrived with less than zero during 1987, where Spader embodied a drug dealer with terrifying nonchalance. When Steven Soderbergh's first feature Sex, Lies, and Videotape debuted at Sundance in 1989 and captured the Palme d'Or, it energized the American independent cinema landscape. Spader portrayed Graham Dalton, an impotent wanderer capable of intimacy solely through recording women describing their sexual experiences. The figure proves deeply troubling, voyeuristic, emotionally exploitative in understated ways. Graham embodies a specific variety of damaged masculinity. He's someone who's rationalized himself into isolation from authentic relationships. He's constructed an intricate framework, providing the semblance of closeness, while shielding him from the exposure that genuine human connection demands. Spader's work here demonstrates mastery in revealing internal damage through restrained external behavior. His delivery stays quiet, almost tender, which renders the character's psychological disturbance more chilling. This performance secured Spader the Cannes Best Actor prize, establishing him at 29 as a critically recognized performer with substantial artistic legitimacy. But here's the critical element. This achievement didn't redirect him toward traditional celebrity. Instead, it validated his approach. The entertainment world now grasped what Spader offered: concentration, intellect, and readiness to occupy ethical gray territories that provoked profound discomfort. The film revolutionized American independent filmmaking, demonstrating that intimate character studies exploring complicated psychological landscapes could achieve both critical recognition and financial viability. For Spader individually, though, it represented authorization, confirmation to keep selecting figures who unsettled audiences, who illuminated aspects of human nature we collectively prefer ignoring. Following Sex, Lies, and Videotape, Spader could have translated this triumph into mainstream protagonist opportunities, romantic film fare, major studio projects. Once more, he selected the alternative route. He intensified his commitment to complexity, deliberately pursuing opportunities allowing exploration of control dynamics, fixation, and the theatrical nature of selfhood. He'd identified his domain and intended to excavate it thoroughly. White Palace in 1990 featured him as Max, a rigid widower attracted to an older blue-collar waitress. Max differed from previous roles, inhibited, emotionally wounded, yet recognizably human. You witnessed Spader discovering the layers beneath stereotypes. This early trajectory created the blueprint. Spader would reliably select the psychologically intricate over the commercially predictable, the unsettling over the reassuring. And early on it became evident he possessed zero desire to play conventional heroic figures. Bad Influence from 1990 casts Spader as Michael, a reserved analyst whose existence unravels after encountering Rob Lowe's Alex, an appealing vagrant harboring a sinister edge. Spader captures the subtle disintegration perfectly. The audience comprehends precisely why Michael gets entangled despite every warning signal blaring. Dream Lover in 1993 reverses the equation. Spader embodies someone fixated on his new spouse, uncovering potential manipulation. The narrative examines his paranoia, his desire for dominance, how attraction transforms into ownership. These productions enabled Spader to investigate the theatrical construction of identity, how individuals fabricate versions of themselves pursuing their wants. His figures frequently exist as both controller and controlled, hunter and hunted. Then Stargate arrived in 1994, unquestionably his largest commercial triumph and his nearest approach to traditional Hollywood protagonist status. As Dr. Daniel Jackson, the nearsighted linguist facilitating an interstellar gateway's activation, Spader portrays the room's smartest person without transforming him into a stereotype. Opposite Kurt Russell's definitive military bearing, he contributes inquisitiveness, kindness, and a gentleness largely absent from his subsequent performances. And here's the revealing aspect. Most performers would have leveraged that momentum directly into a sequence of expensive studio productions. Spader didn't. He regarded Stargate as a singular deviation, acknowledged blockbuster recognition politely, then immediately returned to stranger, more challenging material. The early 90s represented the erotic thriller's peak era, and Spader became its most compelling artist. These weren't prestige productions. They were genre pieces intended to excite and tantalize, yet Spader imported authentic psychological depth. As the 90s concluded, he appeared in Keys to Tulsa, Driftwood, plus the unconventional pair Critical Care and Curtain Call, completing a productive late-decade period. Secretary from 2002 represents this phase's culmination, though it surpasses genre limitations entirely. Wolf in 1994 features James Spader as Richard, the ambitious, treacherous understudy to Jack Nicholson's character Will Randall. During 2003, Spader entered the legal drama The Practice for its 8th season as Alan Shore, a gifted, ethically questionable lawyer treating jurisprudence as intellectual entertainment. In 2013, Spader assumed Raymond Reddington in NBC's The Blacklist, a part that would characterize the following decade of his professional life. Red is a former intelligence operative turned notorious criminal who surrenders to federal authorities and proposes assistance capturing criminals from his list. Reddington represents Spader's most broadly appealing character, crafted for mainstream network programming, yet remains quintessentially Spader. What Spader accomplishes with him is extraordinary. He renders exposition captivating. Red regularly conveys massive amounts of narrative information, but Spader's execution, the vocal cadences, the surprising inflections, how he appears to relish particular words as though they're exquisite wine, keeps viewers absorbed through every word. The Blacklist continued 10 seasons, exceeding 200 episodes, making it Spader's most extended role and likely his most recognized. If Spader proves mysterious on-screen, he's considerably more so beyond it. He grants minimal interviews, and they're frequently illuminating through their elusiveness. When questioned about his methodology or selections, he tends toward abstract language, orbiting around straightforward responses in a distinctly Spader manner. For him, character gets built from external observations as much as internal exploration. James Spader voiced Ultron in Avengers: Age of Ultron during 2015, portraying the threatening AI antagonist. It was a shift into expensive blockbuster territory for a performer associated with unusual, intellectual independent projects. Spader approached it earnestly, utilizing motion capture equipment to contribute physicality to the figure, and saturated Ultron with his characteristic disturbing magnetism, rendering the robotic villain darkly humorous and authentically menacing, rather than merely a digital construct. At 64, Spader has accomplished something increasingly uncommon in Hollywood, a career shaped entirely according to his preferences. He's never been a traditional movie celebrity, never pursued that variety of recognition, but he's generated a body of work that's absolutely unique, even in smaller late-career appearances, like his brief yet unforgettable turn as politician W.N. Bilbo in Spielberg's Lincoln, where he contributed that distinctive Spader duplicity to a historical personality. He stayed unmistakably himself. Spader has invested 4 decades investigating authority, how it's obtained, how it's enacted, how it degrades and binds. His characters nearly always participate in some manipulation form, but Spader never condemns them. He locates the humanity underneath, the injury motivating the conduct, the desire generating the performance. Spader appears captivated by identity's constructed quality, how we all wear disguises and perform roles obtaining what we require. What makes Spader's career extraordinary isn't merely individual performance quality, though many are outstanding. His impact is observable throughout contemporary television, particularly in the complex protagonist's emergence who isn't purely virtuous or wicked. The eloquent monster, the appealing predator, the calculating manipulator who's also somehow sympathetic. He's made audiences accepting of discomfort, taught us to acknowledge the humanity in individuals we'd prefer dismissing as purely malevolent. Characters like Walter White, Don Draper, and numerous others owe something to the territory Spader charted. Regarding what's ahead, Spader has characteristically disclosed little. That consistency, that refusal compromising, is its own form of authenticity, and that's what renders him so perpetually intriguing. Thank you tremendously for watching. If you appreciate this type of content, please comment, like, and subscribe. It genuinely supports the channel. And as always, I truly look forward to seeing you all in the next one.